Currently, Poland is hesitating between continuing to use Korean weapons or switching to European ones, which is putting a brake on Korea's defense exports. Especially with France at the center, European countries are emphasizing that European nations should use European weapons, and as a result, Korea's defense industry has started to suffer. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get right into it. If you want the fastest overseas news updates in Korea, please hit subscribe before we begin. On February 27th, the Polish parliament decided to pass a bill regarding the use of 75 trillion won in loans under the EU's joint weapons procurement program. That might sound a bit complicated. In short, there's a program called SAFE, and they've passed a bill to purchase European countries' weapons using EU funds. The key point is that they are offering loans of up to 256 trillion won at low interest rates. This SAFE program comes with the condition that a large amount of European-made weapons must be purchased, so European countries are showing clear intentions to seriously strengthen their defense industry. There are differing opinions in Poland about replacing Korean weapons with European ones. The majority in the Polish parliament is led by Prime Minister Donald Tusk's faction, and they believe that EU funding is essential to strengthen Poland's defense capabilities. Also, it is a political party with a strong pro-European stance. However, the Law and Justice Party, known for its anti-European and nationalist stance, opposes this, claiming the EU would overly influence Poland's weapons policy. They stress that since European weapons may not arrive quickly, Poland should choose Korean weapons for faster delivery when rapid armament is needed. Poland has a semi-presidential system, so its president and prime minister are from different parties. As mentioned earlier, the prime minister is strongly pro-European, while the president, though technically independent, is backed by the Law and Justice Party. Within Poland, there is ongoing debate about whether to use Korean weapons or European weapons. Some speculate that President Nawrocki may exercise his veto on the joint weapons procurement bill that has passed the parliament. Viewing this solely as Poland's internal politics overlooks the larger issue. The Korean defense industry is now entering a structural growth phase. Korea has prepared for total war for decades, separated from the North only by the armistice line. Facing a real threat from North Korea, Korea's survival strategy includes ammunition stockpiles, reserve forces, and a defense industry focused on maintaining production and advancing technology. Europe shifted defense factories to civilian use after the Cold War, but Korea took a different approach. As a result, Korean weapons are seen as high-performing for their price. This isn't just marketing, it's competitiveness built into the structure. Korea is a country that has maintained a constant state of readiness for decades. Within a military structure that assumes full-scale war, it has consistently maintained artillery capabilities, armored forces, and ammunition stockpiling systems. Korea maintained production lines, retained skilled staff, and kept partner companies operating. As a result, mass production is established and the parts supply chain remains stable. The K9 self-propelled howitzer is a good example, with the efficient production line making 2 to 3 units weekly. The fast production speed means that the actual delivery date can be moved up after a contract is signed. In a situation where the threat of war has become a reality, delivery speed is just as important as performance. In some European countries, deploying the same system can take years due to the time needed to expand production, secure staff, and reorganize parts procurement. Korea can quickly sign contracts and start production since everything is ready. Rearmament in Europe has sped up since the Ukraine war. Ammunition supplies have dropped sharply, highlighting artillery's renewed importance. The issue is time. Countries needing immediate military reinforcement require equipment deliverable within 1 or 2 years, not weapons arriving in 5 years. Korea is targeting this point precisely. There aren't many suppliers who can simultaneously meet the 3 factors of price competitiveness, proven performance, and fast delivery. That's why countries in urgent need of rearmament see Korea as a partner who can immediately boost their military power. Being ahead in this race for speed is the biggest advantage of Korea's defense industry. But now, European countries have started to keep Korea in check, especially led by France. European countries are emphasizing that they should use European weapons. Due to France's growing influence in Europe, several Korean weapons exports have been canceled just before finalization. This trend is evident in recent cases too. In the case of Poland, they emphasize that if you want to sell weapons, you need to strengthen offset agreements such as technology transfer and weapon purchases. Konrad Zgoda, Poland's Deputy Minister of State Assets, said Poland often bought American equipment without mutual investment deals in recent years, viewing the extra cost as necessary to stay under the US security umbrella. He added that this approach made Poland a naive customer. Bloomberg News went on to analyze that the Polish government is making these choices because, while it spends most of its defense budget buying military equipment from the US and South Korea, there is growing criticism that the domestic industry is receiving little benefit. In addition, pressure on Poland continued within the EU. The EU often encourages member states to purchase European-made weapons when lending them funds for arms purchases. That's why Poland ended up choosing Swedish-made submarines. In Korea, they're using localization to address this situation. In the case of Hanwha Aerospace, they set a goal to establish a joint missile factory in Poland with WB, the WB Group of Poland, complete construction by 2029, and start missile production in Poland from 2030. Hyundai Rotem is also working with Poland's state-owned defense company, PEG. Out of the 64 units of the K2PL, the Polish export version of the K2 tank, they also decided to produce 61 units locally. Romania is also moving to acquire Korean-made weapons. Hanwha Aerospace is planning to build a Has Europe factory in Romania to continue its localization strategy. However, despite this competitiveness, European pushback is not going away anytime soon. France has established itself as a main pillar of Europe's defense industry, stressing strategic autonomy and advocating for Europe's defense with European weapons. It's not only about pride, but also the defense ecosystem, jobs, and decades of technological leadership. European countries have jointly developed fighter jets, tanks, missiles, and submarines to strategically keep these industries in the region. Korea's rapid entry into this structure is inevitably seen as a threat. Especially as the same countries are actively adopting Korean weapons, the existing supply chains are being shaken. If they fall behind in terms of delivery speed and price competitiveness, existing companies could quickly lose their market share. The defense industry is one where, once a contract is signed, follow-up logistics, support, and upgrade projects continue for decades. If they lose out on initial orders, their long-term revenue base is also shaken. That's why within Europe, there are ongoing efforts to increase the proportion of local production and restrict the participation of non-European countries through joint funding programs. This defensive strategy combines market logic with political judgment. It is highly likely that such checks will continue in different forms in the future. Barriers to entry can be established by strongly demanding technology transfer, increasing the proportion of local production, or setting conditions for joint development. To expand in Europe, Korea needs more than price and speed. It must develop industrial cooperation, create jobs, and form technology partnerships. This competition is about long-term industrial leadership, not weapon performance. Falling behind could mean losing opportunities quickly. Above all, the Korean government is now carefully considering whether to participate in NATO's so-called Pearl indirect weapons support system for Ukraine. A final decision has not yet been made. Even if we do participate, there is a strong possibility that it will be limited mainly to non-lethal equipment rather than lethal weapons. The government has provided aid and military supplies, but avoids giving weapons directly. Two main reasons are driving its current interest in joining the Pearl system. One is to strengthen strategic ties with NATO, and the other is to expand defense industry cooperation. NATO is currently at the center of European security. Building trust within this structure is directly linked to defense exports. If we show we're ready to share collective security responsibilities, others may see Korea differently. This is because there are values at play that cannot be explained by performance and price alone. It's a matter of solidarity based on shared values. One reason Korea lost Poland's $8 trillion submarine project was its seemingly ambiguous stance on supporting Ukraine, some analyses suggest. Poland, as a NATO frontline country, directly feels the war's impact and strongly prefers partners clearly committed to security solidarity. Korea is competing with Germany for Canada's submarine project. Valued at about 60 trillion won, Canada is a NATO member and actively supports Ukraine. This point can affect the negotiation environment. If Korea participates in Pearl and provides indirect support, it is likely to quickly build up political trust. This goes beyond just selling weapons and extends to long-term military support. It becomes a foundation that can expand into joint research and development and technology cooperation projects. The expansion of defense exports also has a ripple effect on related industries such as steel, electronics, shipbuilding, and semiconductors. As the global food supply structure becomes more rigid and security blocks are strengthened, if Korea can solidify its position within the Western Bloc, there is potential for increased opportunities across all industries. In any case, Europe is currently keeping Korea in check, and the Korean defense industry is facing challenges. Now, the time to make a choice is approaching. This was the story.